What is going on, guys? It is MurderInc, and today I'm going to be going over the brand new fusion that just came out, Gurptuk Mossbeard. So we have a really interesting champion here. First thing I want to do is I want to go over his skills, but then I want to take a slight break, go to the fusion. If you are not going after this guy, I want to show you some viable epics you can go after. If after watching this video, you determine that this guy isn't for you, you wouldn't get the most value out of him being added to your account. One thing I can say about this champion, he has probably the most unique kit I've seen so far. And I was skeptical at first. I was lucky enough to fuse him as soon as it went live. And I spent probably 3 to 4 hours just testing this guy because there's really so much information you can miss if you do this too quickly. So I really want to deep dive and give you all the information I can possibly give you, so you have a really good foundation of information before jumping to any conclusions and making your decision on this champion. So the golden question is going to be, Gurptuk Mossbeard, dream or meme? That's what I want you guys to let me know in the comments below at the end of this video. So let's get right into what his kit does. We have an A1 Biotic Staff, attacks one enemy 2 times, places a 15% continuous heal buff for 1 turn on all allies under poison debuffs. We have an A2 Druidic Boon, removes all debuffs from an ally, then heals them by 30% of their max HP and places a shield buff on the target equal to 20% of their max health for 2 turns. This is pretty big. Cloud of Spores, places 3 5% poison debuffs on all allies for 3 turns. These debuffs cannot be resisted or blocked. Also has an 80% chance of placing block buffs debuff on all enemies for 2 turns. Symbiotes, going over his passive, allies under poison debuff inflict 7.5% more damage for each poison debuff on them, stacking up to a maximum of 30. So that is after 4 poisons you get max efficiency. This damage increase applies to all of their skills, also increases each ally's resistance by 15 for each poison debuff on them. For an aura, he has increases ally resistance in all battles by 50. So now, as mentioned, I do want to go over the epics very quickly. So Umbral Enchantress, if you are free to play, and regardless of how good this champion turns out at the end of this video, if this isn't within reach for you to go after the legendary, I highly recommend going after Umbral Enchantress. She has gotten me through so much content, from faction wars to dungeons. She can even be an arena nuker for you. She hits that hard. So she is a really strong kit. Highly recommend, if you do have to pick an epic, definitely go after Umbral Enchantress. Another champion in this fusion is in fact Catacomb Counselor. He offers an ally attack of up to 3 champions, so it's not as strong as Lonicus or Longbeard, but it is the epic version, so he can definitely help you out. I've seen a very quick Catacomb Counselors in the Platinum Arena, so it's definitely viable to add a champion like this to your team. So overall, if you have the resources and can add this guy to your team, it might not be bad. Definitely look into it, go through his kit, see if he has any benefit for you on your raid account. The other champion we have here is Fang Cleric. I have gone over his kit and I don't see a lot of value. You can definitely make your own decision. However, I don't see a ton of value with this champion. He does have a revive, which can be good. However, I don't think this is enough to say it's 100% worth using the resources into fusing this champion if you're not going to go all the way to the legendary. The last epic we have is Seneschal. He does have a 30% chance of placing a leech once booked. It goes up to 40 for 2 turns on the A1. So that's definitely a consistent source of a leech. He has a single target perfect veil as well as continuous heal that he can apply on 1 ally. Not the strongest, however, most of the kit is leaning towards the A1 here in a counterattack. Now the A3 places a counterattack buff on this champion, so if you did want to use him in a speed team, he has a 4 turn, once fully booked, cooldown of placing a counterattack to reapply that leech buff if you can set the turns in the order of the clan boss team correctly. Now let's get back into the main focus of the video, Gurptuk Mossbeard. Now it's very important that what I'm about to tell you next definitely sticks and you understand this while going forward. Something that's required for taking this champion in pretty much every setting is Stoke to Fury Mastery. Without this, you are losing more value than I can possibly put into words. So if you are going to build this guy for your clan boss team, these are the masters I recommend for every single War Master champion you put on your team. Go down to War Master, Methodical, and then go straight over to Stoke to Fury. So what this essentially does is this builds directly off of his passive. So now you're increasing damage from a passive, having poisons, but you're also getting another 12% from masteries, which is very big. Now, what kind of murdering video would it be if I didn't showcase Clan Boss? So what I want to do here is I'm going to go into Clan Boss, show you how I found the best use for him was. I'm going to show you a couple of screenshots of different teams I tried. There is one team I haven't tried yet. I'm definitely going to make a video. It's going to be a little bit more difficult to make that type of Clan Boss team. So I'm definitely going to need more time to formulate all of my thoughts together on how I can make it work. So the team I want to use today, that's going to be a good example of what he can do on auto. This isn't necessarily to showcase how good he is in Clan Boss, but I do want to show you how he works on auto. And there are a few conditions to that, so I'll definitely go into that as I start this run. But I basically want to go over what his role in the Clan Boss should be for your team if you want to get the maximum amount of value out of this champion. So let's start off this Clan Boss team. As you can see, I have Alton as the leader. We have our guy here, and this is important. I have Dracomorph going first to debuff. Then I have our new fusion going second. So keep that in mind when we're going forward. He is going to use his pretty much poison nuke on his whole team after the first AoE. That is what I found to be the most useful time to use him. So we're going to use Alton's defense up there. So I'm not sure if you noticed already, but this is probably the issue with this champion. He does a ton of damage to your team. So I'm not running lifesteal on any of these champions. Obviously, Tyrant has the ability to self-heal himself. So unfortunately, Dracomorph got stunned right off the bat there. So I'm going to have to cycle through this one more time very quickly. But pretty much, if you haven't figured it out already, the big news with this champion is he is pretty much what Steel Skull should be. If you can align the cooldowns properly, he will always cleanse the person with the stun on them. And that is absolutely gigantic. There are a few things to keep in mind when trying to make your champion do this. The biggest thing is you have to make sure everyone has an equal amount of debuffs. Now this is something that's very simple and easy to do. The only time you'd ever run into a problem is if health on one champion starts dropping lower than others. That would definitely be an issue. So hopefully our Dracomorph doesn't get stunned here, so I can throw this on auto and we can watch this in action. Alright, perfect. Let's defense down and weaken the boss. Now we're going to use Druidic Bloom on Alton, hit auto, and watch this team go. So as you can probably guess from what I just mentioned, I did try this out with Razin instead of Dracomorph and Occult Brawler instead of Tyrant. It was a lot of fun. Obviously the numbers are much different than this team, but not as much as you would think. So what's the benefit of using this new legendary? As we're going to see coming into this stun round, he's going to cleanse Alton because he has 4 debuffs opposed to everyone else's 3 debuffs. So this is completely auto, and this is probably the greatest change this game has from this champion's AI. So that's beautifully done. One thing to notice, and I'm going to go over this does take certain synergy with skill ups. So unfortunately, you have to get lucky with skill ups to make this possible all of the time. If he has the ability to poison your team, he will actually poison your team instead of cleansing that debuff, which is quite unfortunate. I haven't figured out a way to work around that yet. When I first did the test, I tested him out with no books. Then I ended up getting extremely lucky, and it was a huge gamble. One book could have went to the wrong spot, and it ended up working out in my favor. So I'm going to go over that after this run. So the one really important thing to note here is I'm using Valkyrie. Valkyrie is actually, I don't want to say essential, but it's extremely important for this team because of how much damage is coming out from the poisons on everybody. As we can see, another awesome, I love seeing this. I've tried to make Steel Skull work so many times in a Clan Boss team, and there's nothing more frustrating than when he uses his heal on a random teammate who is barely missing any health over cleansing a stun that can just alter your whole order. Is Valkyrie required in a team like this? The answer is no. Valkyrie is not required. If you don't have a Valkyrie, everyone has to be in lifesteal gear. I'm currently using Stalwart gear on all of these champions here, which is why I can get away with using Valkyrie. So if you have Valkyrie, highly consider using Stalwart and an Immortal set. Any source of extra healing is going to help you here because the new fusion is not good enough to heal you up on your own. As we can see here, I do have a pretty solid mix of damage per round. We're at turn 20 and we're at about 19 million damage. So that's a very high ratio that I can get away with because I am using a Valkyrie. So if you are going to build a team without a Valkyrie and someone with lifesteal, whether it's a Martyr, Skull Crusher, or you're going to test with a speed team before I have a chance to make it, I highly recommend building them tanky and building them in lifesteal gear so they can actually sustain all of the debuffs this new fusion is putting on your team. Now quickly, just watching the numbers, it's very easy to see that the amount of damage coming from all of the champions because of his passive, because of the mastery synergy, is actually insane. So as we can see, Draco's hitting for 165,000. It's not too crazy. He is wearing a bit more defense stats than I would have liked. I did notice that it did help him survive longer, so that was definitely a plus here. But overall, I think he's a pretty cool champion. There are definitely lots of things to consider if you're going to use him. It's going to be an investment regardless, whether you're going for the fusion or don't have the books. If you don't have the books, it's going to be much harder to replicate all of the results I have here for you today. So that's definitely something to consider going forward. One cool thing is he does do a decent bit of damage. Unfortunately, he has two skills that don't hit the boss, but as we can see there, 18,000 a hit, 2 hits. Any champion that hits twice has a higher chance of placing that War Master. So overall, he can definitely be beneficial to your team. As we see here, we lost Draco. I probably should build him even more tankier, but I want to keep him on my dungeon team. Alright guys, so as we can see here, I ended up being just shy of the 2 key. Obviously, we did lose Dracomorph a bit early, which didn't help the case. If I decided to throw Stalwart gear on him, he would have survived longer. This is probably a 40 million per key team. But I kind of wanted to show you, since I do use pretty much the same champions all the time, that my normal teams that can go up to 50 million per key, this team isn't going to compete with that. Gurptuk, Mossbeard is definitely a good champion. However, Ultra Nightmare, as everyone knows, ramps up very high in damage, much more than the other difficulties. So using a champion that constantly adds damage to your team isn't the best way to approach content this tough, especially in the later rounds. Can you be successful? Absolutely. I'm going to show you a couple of screenshots, as I mentioned, of teams without some of these legendaries here. Is it going to be as good as a normal tanky team? That's something you're going to have to decide for yourself. Compared to the champions you currently have, you're definitely going to have to take a deep dive and say, is this champion good for me? So as mentioned, what I want to talk about is cooldowns on this champion and how they interact with each other. So I managed to fully book his A3. Now in an ideal world, if you are using books, this is exactly what you want. You want to reduce the cooldown of this A3 ability so it's a 3-turn instead of a 4-turn. So he's applying the poisons for 2 crucial rounds every time it goes on. The second thing to consider is Druidic Boon, his A2. This is something you do not want falling off of cooldown. If it is off of cooldown, then it will not consistently clear the stun every 3-turn cycle. So that's very important to remember. If you're booking him and you land like this, and this isn't fully booked, you have to weigh the options in your head. Is it worth to gamble? If this becomes a 2-turn cooldown, you cannot use this as a reliable clear, since obviously the stun happens every 3rd turn, and this champion will use this every 2nd turn. So as mentioned, I did get lucky. The only 2 books I'm missing is 10% damage on the A1 and this -1 cooldown. However, the difference in damage for comparison was about 4 million damage. It's definitely not as much as you would expect from a desync in letting your champion get stunned. On top of it, the champion that actually ended up getting stunned on my specific team was Valkyrie, and everyone knows how crucial Valkyrie is to applying that counterattack. So with all that said and done, the damage difference wasn't huge, but it was still noticeable. So now that I went over that, I want to show you this screenshot where I tried Razin and Occult Brawler. Lots of people speculated on the synergy between Gurptuk and Occult Brawler. I did build Occult Brawler more tanky than I did for damage. The problem with Occult Brawler isn't what you would think. A lot of people said using Occult Brawler in a counterattack, he's going to get an extra turn, he's going to burn through his counterattack. You can actually set things up so he always uses his extra turn either before the stun or after the stun, so he doesn't clear any counterattack buff. The problem with the Occult Brawler is As mentioned, for how Mossbeard's AI works, he's always going to target whichever ally has the most debuffs. Now, if you've ever used a Cult Brawler, you'll know how insane it is when he starts stacking his debuffs. So I can tell you, his debuff bar was full in this run with just a counterattack, and this isn't even a speed team. So that's something to consider. I was unable to figure out a way on how to tune this team with an Occult Brawler to make sure the stun target was always cleared. If I can make it so a Cult Brawler was the champion to always get stunned, it is very possible this will work. However, I was not able to do that. As we can see here, this is still a 3-key team. I do still have a Valkyrie here, however, I'm not using lifesteal on these champions, so if you have a Skull Crusher, you can throw them in there. The speed I'm using on these champions is 171 counterattack, and then the rest of the DPS is between 172 and 182. So if you did want to mimic this with any attack down you had, any counterattack you had, I highly recommend doing that. But make sure you use lifesteal gear as mentioned. The last thing I want to talk about this new fusion is how good is he outside of the clan boss? What can we do with him? So this guy is kind of like a Battle 2.0 in dungeons as far as how you can use him efficiently in boosting your team. As we can see here, 12-second spiders run. All he's doing is he's using the poisons, which is a very quick animation, which is the key here. And he just increases the damage of all of these champions incredibly. One thing to note, most people won't have these two champions together. I don't even have a Battle, so I can't show you here today. However, if you do the math, you can actually use a Battle and Gurptuk together, and Septimus can actually one-shot the spider just from those damage increases alone. That is something to definitely consider while going forward. If you have a defense down and weaken, attack aura, Battle, and Gurptuk applying poisons on your team in order, your Septimus will actually be able to one-shot the spider boss on auto. So this concept would also apply to Dragon. This champion, in my opinion, isn't going to be the best progression champion, as he is causing lots of harm to your team, and his kit unfortunately isn't strong enough to out-heal all of the damage he's putting on your team. Alright guys, that concludes my video today on this fusion guide for this champion. Let me know what you think. What's your consensus? If you had to ask me, dream or meme champion, I say he's a very fun champion. I'm leaning more towards the meme side, and I'm going to explain why. I think that he has a lot of appeal to him because he can definitely boost your team for great success. However, he's definitely a gamble. So he's, in a sense, applying damage to your team to increase your team's damage. So it's pretty much going to be a race against time in any content you're doing. Whether it's the clan boss trying to get as much damage on your team as possible, but for the added damage from this legendary on top of whatever incoming damage is just going to kill you right away. So that's definitely something to consider. Is he a fun champion? Absolutely. I think Plarium did an awesome job making this champion. Is he going to be ideal for your account progression? Let me know what you think based on the information I just gave you. I still have a bunch more testing to do, specifically a speed team for the clan boss. I really want to see how this guy can work. What if we give him multiple turns? So that's something I'm going to be watching. Don't forget, if you like this content, subscribe, turn on that notification bell. Really appreciate all the views and support, and I will see you all in the next video.